All right. So on Tuesday, we were talking about the different criteria for naming muscles, and hope that helps with remembering the muscle names. And one of the things I said was that if you don't remember what that muscle does, consider what would happen if that muscle shrinks. And so what we're talking about is the action of the muscle. So today we're going to talk about these movements. We've just got a list of movements. So I use the term flex on Tuesday quite a bit. And flexing means decreasing the angle between two bones. With a lot of these movements, they're opposites of each other. So the opposite of flexion would be extension, which would be to increase the angle between two bones. For the next two, we're going to go to your feet. Plantar flexion is pointing your toes away from the body. Dorsiflexion is the opposite. It's pointing your toes up towards your head. So plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. Get away from the feet for a moment, but we'll come back to them. Hyperextension. We don't, typically on our list of movements, we don't usually include hyperextension, but because I know that some of you do hyperextend your joints sometimes, I thought I would mention it. So this is extending beyond straight. So, you know, last block, Teresa was showing us how she can hyperextend her elbows, hyperextend your knees.
Like that.
Yep.
Like if you sit on the floor and like you flex your feet up, like my heel goes off the ground.
Yes, that would be a hyperextension.
Like when you just
Oh.
Oh. Do it again. I can do that with my arms.
That's just not right.
So I like can't straighten my arms all the way. Is that also something with muscles?
It might be, yes. Very well might be.
Your muscles are too short, right? Like if they're
Yeah.
that's as far as it will go.
It's just, yep.
Oh. Wait, do that. I mean, it looks generally straight. It's like when you do dance moves, that it's like. Yeah, I can really straighten your arms. Like, I have a picture of you when you're doing that with your arms too. Like, they're like, yeah, they're almost out, but they're not. They're close. Yeah.
Not quite there. So it'd probably be from the muscles being shorter than the bone.
Oh,
Abduction. When someone is abducted, what happens to them?
They're taken away.
They're taken away. So abduction is moving away from the midline of the body. And the opposite of this is adduction. So moving towards the center line of the body. So you have a group of muscles that are on your inner thighs. They're called adductors. And what they do when they tense up, they bring your leg in towards the center line of your body. Back down to your feet. Inversion is moving your foot so that the sole is facing the midline of the body.
Is facing the midline of the body?
Correct.
That you like it's not something you like.
It's called stippling.
Oh, what is that?
Yeah. Okay.
Like when I wear heels, I walk like that because sometimes my
Oh.
is so painful after you sprain an ankle. Sorry. Have you guys ever been running in gym and then like fallen like that, like step out really hard?
Yeah.
My ankles are so weak that sometimes I just fall over because my ankles are
No,
This
me
next
too.
one,
like that.
going out.
I'm sorry?
Since it's opposite, the next one.
Yep.
I've always wondered what that one is.
What is that?
Eversion is the opposite. No.
No, it's this one.
Yeah, so the sole is facing
So your
outward.
foot. Oh,
You're twisting your foot outward.
So like when you come around, I don't know what these are called in Berlin. That thing. I know. What Trisha wants.
Trisha,
I'm doing my show.
Supination.
Yeah, no, I couldn't get my knee up, so she can like hit my knee with like.
Okay, now remember these are movements. And so supination is when you're moving, you're twisting your lower arm so that your palm is upward. So we're going into that anatomical position.
I'm sorry.
Can you just say over?
Moving so your palm is upward. So when you reach this, what you're doing is you're making the radius and the ulna parallel to one another.
I think this is the close range of motion.
And then pronation is the opposite of this. Sammy, you're really gonna like one that's coming up here. So pronation is the opposite. So I'm turning my palm down so that the radius crosses over the ulna.
I misheard that last part. Turning radius down, so.
No, turning the palm down so that the radius crosses over the ulna.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's like a. I mean, you can't like feel it.
Well, no, but like you
No,
can
it's
feel
just
the
like-
muscle in your
it's
arm.
just like how it
tightening.
rotates, like,
yeah, I can feel
almost
it.
like
you
you
can
know what I
collapse.
mean?
All right, circumduction.
Is it normal if you go like this that this like pops? It like I can feel it like snap.
Not
that. Yeah, my wrist.
I had that.
It doesn't bother you. Yeah.
Exactly. Doesn't it?
Because it's only in my right hand with these two fingers, but if I squeeze them together, this like cracks all the way down. Like I don't know why.
I used to be able to like move my shoulder bone like out. Like you could like see it like rotate.
Yeah, I'm double jointed in my shoulder. I can pop the socket.
Like I could like move the
No.
bone.
We're done.
I can just imagine what the people who are listening to this are going to be thinking.
We're very sorry.
Wait, what happened?
You can't see it anymore, but like the like the little ball on the top of the shoulder, it just like shifts downward.
Wait, what's the definition of this?
I haven't said yet.
Okay.
We got distracted by, we got distracted. All right, circumduction is when you move a limb so that the distal end makes a circle.
Yeah. Oh no. Or
Yeah, I mean, it can be a little circle, it could be a big circle, but it's just that the distal end is carving out a circle.
We're literally used to do one of the pinwheels song where you go like this really fast. I still do that. I'm catching up to you now. It's a race now to see who can shatter the next one. I bet it'll be me first.
Rotation. Rotation is the movement of a limb or the head, too.
The what?
A limb or the head
Oh, okay.
on its longitudinal axis. So with the head, this could be shaking your head from side to side. That would be an example of rotation. In your hands, this is one example that you might like. This is like the screwdriver motion.
Yeah. It almost goes like all the way around.
Yeah. Your legs don't have it quite as much because of the way the joint is developed, but
Silly joints.
I just wanted to try and be like a bird and then like go this way, but I just can't. An owl. Yeah, like an owl.
opposition refers to the hand. And this is all about your opposable thumb. Okay, so we have the ability to match our thumb to any one of our fingers. That's one of our unique features. Whereas if you think like with dogs and cats, they have the dew claw. Their thumb is like up on their wrist. So they're not going to be able to do that. I was going to say debatable, definitely debatable.
In the topic of thumbs. Well, yeah. Does that also go with like people being able to like touch their thumb to their wrist? I can't do that. So if you have flu,
I did that one time.
Oh,
and
I
I
just
nearly dislocated my thumb. So I
Yeah.
couldn't do it again.
My friend used to be able to touch her pinky to her thumb. Like, or not her finger.
I can do that.
That's so cool.
Her fingers are
I got everyone at the same time.
Everyone like tried it too. We're all like, wait.
Like
No, like backwards. She could like, she was like double jointed on her wrist. She could like flip her. No, on her wrist this way.
All right. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the microanatomy of the muscle. So we'll be looking inside of a muscle cell and see what's actually going on in there. But today I want to take a look at something else so that we can be ready for our lab. So isotonic and isometric contractions. So let's start with isotonic. The term isotonic means same tone. And this is when the contraction of the muscle is successful. And movement occurs. So most of the contractions that we make are isotonic contractions. Right now you have a bunch of them going on in your hand as you're writing. Lots of little isotonic contractions.
When you say that it means the same tone, like what does that mean?
basically that throughout the muscle there is the same amount of contraction going on. So it's not like part of the muscle is contracting more than the other part. So we'll talk about muscle tone in a little bit. I think that's next on our list, actually. Isometric contractions. The muscle is attempting to contract, but is not able to. Because there is an immovable or barely movable obstacle. Like a what? No. Because we're talking about movements here.
Oh, okay.
No, like this wall. Okay. This would be a good example. Okay. So I'm going to push on this wall. I want to knock it over. Is it going to work? No. But if I am truly pushing on this and trying to straighten my arm, I can feel my muscles in my arm trying. They're getting more tensed up, but there's not a successful contraction. And we're going to talk a little bit here about exercises and about how different types of exercises contribute to your overall muscle health and well-being. So muscle tone all the time, even when your muscles are relaxed, all of the time, your nervous system is systematically stimulating the muscle cells to contract. So even when the muscle is relaxed, your nervous system is systematically telling those muscle cells to contract. Now, not all at once. This is not going to produce movement, but it helps to keep the muscle cells healthy. So this is what makes your muscles not feel just like jello when they're relaxed. And the one thing that can stop this, when there's paralysis, when there is a lack of stimulation from the nervous system, there can be no muscle tone. And so the muscles become flaccid and flabby. And if this is prolonged, they will eventually atrophy.
So is that like with like numbing things that the doctors use if you're hurting?
Right, so then you're not getting the nervous stimulation, and so that's why you get the like flipping the thugging. And especially with the ones in the mouth, it feels so weird. It feels like your cheeks are like huge, but you look in the mirror and they're really not. And it's because you're not getting the sensation from the inside. You're not getting the nervous sensation that you usually get, but you're getting the one from the outside when you touch it. And so there's that disconnect, and your brain is like, but wait a second. I feel this out here, but I don't feel it in there, so it must be out here, kind of thing.
You said that if it continues, it will eventually
Atrophy. All right, so the effects of exercise. There's two basic types of exercise. Aerobic exercise. What? No. Cardio exercises are aerobic exercises. So aerobic exercises. Aerobic means we require oxygen. We need oxygen to make ATP. And where in the cell is the ATP made? Mitochondria, exactly. Okay, so in the mitochondria. So when you do aerobic exercises, what they do is they help to strengthen your muscles and make them more flexible. And make them more resistant to fatigue. So what happens when you do aerobic exercises is you're increasing the blood supply to the muscles. This is great. That means you're giving them more oxygen. But in order for them to be able to use that oxygen to produce ATP, they need more mitochondria. So over time, what we notice is an increase in the number of mitochondria in the muscle cells. So this is going to increase the endurance of those muscle cells. The other type of exercise is resistance exercise. Resistance exercise is things like lifting weights. And so we're using those isometric contractions. We said the isometric contractions are against immovable or slightly movable, barely movable. And so presumably when you're lifting weights that are at the upper end of the spectrum of what you can lift. And so that's a resistance exercise. That's an isometric contraction. And what this does is obviously it builds strength, but it also makes the muscle grow larger. And what's happening in the muscle, we're not getting more muscle cells. Instead, we're getting bigger muscle cells. The existing muscle cells get larger. So there are more contracting units, which means you're stronger. So when we use our muscles strenuously and for a long period of time, we can experience muscle fatigue. Now, true muscle fatigue is when the muscle is unable to contract even though it's being stimulated. This is due to an oxygen debt. And so basically what's happening is you can't move that muscle anymore. It will not contract. regardless of the fact you're trying to move it. You're giving it, your nervous system is giving it the information it needs, telling it contract, darn it, contract, and it can't do it until that oxygen debt is paid back.
Is that a reason for sleep paralysis, or is that something different?
That's something different. This is not real common, except marathon runners. All right, that's it for our notes for today.